Hey everybody. I've been spending a lot of time lately talking about and thinking about, do I really want to make the switch to a mirrorless format? I'm a full-time wedding photographer in Tampa, Florida. I do a lot of weddings, I do portraits, I do headshots, I do pretty much a little bit of everything. And it just seems like the mirrorless revolution is here to stay. It used to be that it was kind of a quaint thing, but I'm really beginning to think that mirrorless is going to be like digital was. I mean, right now it's the new thing, and should we try switching to that? But eventually, everybody is going to switch to mirrorless. There's just really not a good compelling reason to have a mirror in your camera anymore. So we're going to have to switch to mirrorless eventually. And the real question is, when do I do it? When do I go from DSLR to mirrorless? Do I do it now? Do I wait another year? And what are the factors that are going to make me make that decision or make that switch? Now, I want to be clear that this video is not going to be an in-depth, step-by-step, every single little thing about a mirrorless camera and a DSLR so that you can compare every single factor. That's not what this is at all. There's plenty of videos out there made by professional review companies that will tell you all the little intricate details of each camera. But what I want to do is really talk about my experience as a photographer and what is going to motivate me to make the switch, and a little bit about what brand I might be switching to, because I really enjoy seeing those sorts of videos, so I like to make them as well. All right, so let's talk about the pros to switching to mirrorless at this point. The biggest pro for me, believe it or not, is not all the technical stuff that we keep hearing about, but really it's about the weight and the size. If you're a full-time wedding photographer and you're like me and you carry your gear on your hips when you work, man, after a 7 or an 8 hour wedding, the next day you wake up, you can barely move. You got the wedding hangover. Your whole body is sore. Listen, I'm not getting any younger. And that was great. When you first started out as a photographer, you liked that you had the big heavy camera and the big heavy gear. But nowadays you're like, really, it would be nice if I could just have something lighter, something that wasn't so bad to carry all day. And with a lot of the mirrorless camera systems, if you switch to some of the mirrorless camera systems, you could be cutting the weight by a third or even more. And they're a little bit smaller too, and easier to handle and more unobtrusive. So this is probably the biggest single factor for me making the switch to mirrorless from DSLR. Another big factor has got to be price. Now, of course, it's going to cost some money to make the switch to mirrorless right now, but over the long term, it's actually going to be cheaper to be mirrorless. The cameras that I'm looking at, you're looking at sometimes as low as $1,600 for the camera that you want. And I guess I should say right now that the camera that I'm looking at is the Fuji. The Fuji has a brand new camera called the X-T3, and it's getting great reviews. And it's going to be a whole lot easier if I just compare everything to one camera than to everything. Because, well, I mean, if you get the Sony, right, what is it, the A9 or the A7 is almost $4,000. So it's not always cheap. It just really depends on what you're going to get. But the one that's really got me interested right now is the Fuji X-T3, because it's about $1,600, and if I was to replace every single thing that I would need to replace in order to make the switch to that camera, I'm talking about a new camera, backup camera, like the X-T2 say for a backup, plus three lenses, one wide, one medium, one long, plus 2 flashes. I wouldn't have to replace my off-camera flashes, but I would have to have a remote for those, but I already have a remote that works with Fuji, so that's it. That's all I would have to replace. I could actually replace all of that, I believe, for under $6,000. And that is a huge incentive. To be able to get a whole new kit, brand new from top to bottom, for less than $6,000, when you consider that you can spend $3,000 to $4,000 just on a body. I have a Canon 5D Mark III. I think I paid $3,500 for that when it was new. So price is a big deal. Focus is an issue. Now, it used to be a negative issue, because the mirrorless cameras didn't have a great reputation for focusing fast, but they're really starting to step up their game now, and you're really hearing that they focus really, really well. And in addition to that, you're getting the great eye focus tricks. The Fuji cameras, for example, Sony does it as well. They will focus on an eye automatically for you. This makes it so much easier. If you don't have to move that joystick around or move your finger around on the back of the screen, you can easily have the camera just grab focus. I have a Fuji X100F, and it grabs the face all the time and focuses for me. It's also nice if you want to shoot unobtrusive, and this is another reason that mirrorless is great. This is another pro for mirrorless, is that you can hold the camera down and just glance down at the screen to take a picture. So if you're taking pictures of the bride getting ready and that sort of thing, and you're trying to be very unobtrusive and you like a very photojournalistic style, well, this can be very convenient. Also, if you got to hold the camera over your head, which when I shoot a bar mitzvah, I frequently have to hold the camera over my head to shoot the hora. A whole lot easier to hold the camera over your head if you've got a screen that you can tilt down and look at instead of just blindly shooting, which is how I shoot now. Another great feature that I really love on mirrorless cameras is the electronic viewfinder. When you're shooting in natural light, it's just beautiful to be able to see the exposure in the camera. If it's a little too light or a little too dark, you can just fix it as opposed to having to chimp it after you take the shot. But here's another big thing that you never hear anybody talk about. I wear reading glasses, and I can't see the numbers on the top of my camera without reading glasses, and I can't really review the picture on the LCD screen on the back of the camera without reading glasses. Or in my case, I use a Hoodman loop that's set to my reading glasses power when I want to look at a picture in detail on the back of a camera. You don't have this problem with an EVF because the EVF has a diopter built into it, and everything that you see on the back of the camera you can also see through the viewfinder. So when you take a picture or when you want to work with your menu system, you can just bring the camera right up to your eye and look straight through there with your reading glasses power dialed in and do everything that you want to do. This is great. I'm on vacation and stuff like that. I sometimes wear like trifocal reading glasses all the time, and so it's really not a problem. But when I'm shooting an event, I don't at all because I'm looking through the viewfinder all the time. And to be able to look at my pictures right there in the viewfinder as well, or look at my menu settings without having to pull out the diopter and put it on the back of the camera, or without having to put on my reading glasses, that's a great bonus. One of the things I love about Fuji is their film simulations. Now, it's true, if I'm shooting a professional job, I'm going to be shooting in RAW, so why does it matter that you have a Fuji film simulation for JPEGs if you're going to shoot in RAW? Well, the great thing is those Fuji film simulations are also available in Adobe Camera Raw. So even though you're shooting in RAW, once you get everything home and you've picked out the images that you're going to keep, you can quickly convert all of them to acro. So you can convert all of them to classic chrome. I love classic chrome for color. So that's a really cool trick. And it's taken me a long time to get used to it because I've always kind of felt like, well, it's like an Instagram filter. You know, it seems amateur, I guess. But I got over it because Fuji's film simulations are just fantastic and I love them. And I find myself when I do shoot a professional job, sometimes I'll shoot with my X100F just for fun. I'll shoot some stuff with that. And I find myself wanting to use those film simulations because I really like them. I just like the overall look of them. Okay, let's talk about some of the cons of switching to a mirrorless system from a DSLR, and especially switching to the Fuji X-T3. And just as I said earlier that price is a great pro, well, it's also a con because if you don't switch, you don't spend any money at all. It's really expensive to buy new gear. I've probably got $15,000 worth of gear in my main kit, and that gear has been working for me now for almost 10 years. And it's working fine still. There's no reason to really switch. I'm doing a good job. I'm getting good work. I'm getting great images. I've built my entire career on the Canon 5D Mark III. Before that, it was the Mark II. And I really don't have to switch. So that's a pretty big con. I mean, if I made the switch tomorrow, it would cost me, well, let's see, maybe $6,000 to replace all the gear. And then I could probably get $4,000 for my old gear. So $2,000 to make the switch, and that's $2,000 that I could spend someplace else. But it would be fun, right? It would be fun getting all new gear. Another thing that's a pro and a con is I mentioned that the weight is a pro in switching to mirrorless, and the size of the cameras being smaller is a pro, but that can also be a con. I don't exactly have small hands, and wrapping my hands around the smaller camera and working with it all day might actually be a bad thing. I recently had a chance to pick up and play with the new Canon full-frame mirrorless that they just came out with, and when I wrapped my fingers around the front grip, my fingers were brushing right up against the lens because the camera body itself is smaller, and so there's less room in between the grip and the lens for your hand to go. So I don't know. I plan on going to Imaging USA in Atlanta in January. I'm going to be speaking there, and I plan on going to the Fuji booth and spending quite a bit of time with the X-T3 in my hands to see if I really, maybe it's one of those things where you want a smaller camera, but the truth is you have to have a bigger camera. I mean, we all want to wear the tight jeans, but sometimes you just have to admit that you're a big fat jeans guy. Well, maybe that's the case with me. Maybe I'm a big fat camera guy. Another big thing that's a con, switching to mirrorless, with the exception of the new Canon full-frame mirrorless, is that when you swap lenses, the sensor is not protected. And this is a big deal for me because I spend a lot of time shooting weddings and portraits on the beach. Wind, sand, dust. You really don't want to know what my camera looks like after a year. I have to send it off to Canon every single year and have them do a full clean from top to bottom. It's disgusting. I mean, people look at it. I've had friends pick it up and look through my camera and go, oh my God, how can you possibly shoot with this camera? And a big concern for me is that when you take the lens off of one of these cameras, the sensor is exposed. There's nothing blocking the sensor. Now, the new Canon camera does, in fact, shut the shutter down and protect the sensor. And this seems like such a no-brainer to me. I can't believe that the other camera companies aren't doing this, but they're not doing it yet. Now, the Fuji X-H1, the new one, or rather, the X-H1 is the old one, but eventually they're going to come out with the X-H2, and for that one, I'm hoping that maybe that's when they'll put that in. Maybe that's when I'll make the switch. I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens with that camera. But it's a big, big factor for me. Now, it wouldn't be a big factor for you if you're shooting normal weddings or portraits and stuff like that. You're not in a bad environment. But anybody who has to swap lenses in an environment where there's a lot of dust and wind and dirt and sand, not having your sensor protected during the swap, that's a big deal. Okay, here's another factor that has nothing to do with the camera, but has everything to do with the manufacturer. Fuji is a great brand, and I love Fuji. I love my Fuji camera. It's really the only reason I'm even considering Fuji is because I love my X100F so much. But it's not Canon, is it? Canon has Canon Professional Services. You send your gear off to Canon. Within a week, you've got it back. It's been cleaned. It's been fixed, depending on what your level is with Canon Professional Services. They've got great customer service. They've got great repairs. And this is no small thing. Whenever a third-party manufacturer comes out with a great new trigger or great new light or something along those lines, it's always designed to work with Canon and Nikon first. Fuji, Olympus, Pentax, Minolta, all those guys, that's all going to come later down the chain because they don't sell as many cameras as Canon and Olympus. So even though right now I don't need anything, who knows what happens tomorrow when some great new awesome thing comes out and suddenly I can't get it from my Fuji because, well, they just haven't made it for the Fuji yet. The last thing that is a con to switching to mirrorless is, well, it's hard. It's hard to give up something that you've been using your whole life. I love Canon. Canon has never let me down. Their lenses are stellar because really Canon is a lens company first and a camera company second. They've got a wider selection of lenses than anybody else does. You can always count on them to come out with new, very cool lenses, very good optics, and it's tough to walk away from that. It's tough to walk away from being the guy who shoots with the most popular cameras in the world to becoming the guy that shoots with a camera model that's the young, up-and-coming, scrappy camera, right? I don't know. But I really think I've got to switch to mirrorless at some point because we're all going there. And if I wait too long, how much money will I be able to get for my old Canon gear? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch a little bit more. First of all, I'm going to go and I'm going to put that X-T3 in my hands and I'm going to play with it and work with it and see if I like it. One of the things about the X-T3 that I do love is it has 2 camera slots, which, by the way, Canon, I'm never going to buy a Canon mirrorless camera. I don't care if it is full frame. I'm never going to buy it if it doesn't have 2 slots. I'm a wedding photographer. I've got to have 2 slots. Now, Sony, they did it right, but Canon, no. I think they did it right. Does Sony have 2 slots? I think they do. But Fuji has done it, but Canon has not. But they will. You can bet they'll come out with a full frame Canon mirrorless with 2 slots. It'll probably be the next big release from them. It'll be geared specifically towards us. That might be the game changer for me. Maybe when I make the switch, I stay with Canon. But I really do like Fuji. I don't know. I just love shooting with my X100F. It's so much fun, and I'm wondering what it would be like to shoot full-time with a Fuji camera. But I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep an eye on Canon. I'm going to keep an eye on Fuji. I'm going to go to Imaging USA in January. I'm going to play around with the Fuji some more. I'm going to sleep on it a little bit, dwell on it a little bit. But maybe next year I make the switch. I don't know. What about you? Listen, this has not been a super detailed video. So if you want to get super detailed in the comments, be my guest. Hash it out. All the little time, phase detection and all that kind of stuff, all you wanted to do. I just wanted to talk about how it feels to be a DSLR shooter who never thought he would shoot anything but a DSLR. And now I'm actually considering making the switch to mirrorless. And in this case, Fuji is the front runner to get my money and my loyalty going forward. Hey, don't forget to follow me online. Just go to Facebook and go to my group. I have a group called Pro Photo Talk with Boo-Ray. It's a great group. It's got nothing but photographers in it. We talk about photography all the time. We post funny things and you'll enjoy it. Just go to Facebook, Pro Photo Talk with Boo-Ray. Also, you can find me on Instagram. You can find my website, boorayperry.com. And I have a fantastic podcast. It's called Photobomb, and you will love it. So if you listen to podcasts, or even if you don't, you should. It's available where all podcasts are found. Just go look Photobomb up on any podcast app. Thanks for watching.